On this episode of Insights into Technology, we've got hackers targeting Russia, Microsoft rescuing admins from their own delete first, ask questions later policy, and Google accidentally moonlighting as a reverse phone book. Stick around, we've got all the digital drama you didn't know you need on this episode of Insights into Technology.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, episode 29, Executive Disorder, now with extra malware. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and this is your tech news of the week. First up is an article from Cyberscoop, Quantum Leap or Quantum Lapse. President Trump signed a sweeping cybersecurity executive order aimed at pruning elements from his predecessors' playbooks, namely Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Key rollbacks include the removal of federal digital ID mandates such as mobile driver's licenses, scaling back secure software procurement requirements, and narrowing AI cyber coordination vulnerability management instead of broader AI-driven defenses. The order simultaneously ramps up focus on hardware tech, secure software development, border gateway protocol integrity, post-quantum cryptography, IoT device trust labels, and retaining foreign-focused cyber sanctions. So there's some shifts in the federal policy here. Removing mandatory secure software attestations may reduce compliance burdens on software vendors. This is one that kind of is in my wheelhouse going through certifications for CMMC. So I'm curious how this is going to play out moving forward, considering it was an initiative that was started under the first Trump administration. The mandate for post-quantum cryptography is kind of, I think, premature, really. They're maintaining agencies to begin adopting standards resistant to quantum-enabled decryption signals. They're trying to future-proof it here, but I think the technology is at such an infantile stage that any defense you come up with right now will almost immediately be obsolete once quantum cryptography really comes to its own. While Biden pushed back for proactive AI-based threat hunting, the new order refocuses efforts on vulnerability management and open academic data sets, potentially slowing innovation in AI-driven cyber defense. And it's a more aggressive posture at developing AI, I think, than trying to take a cautious approach and keep controls on it so it doesn't get out of hand. I think that's rather reckless. I think given the threats that we've seen so far coming from AI, we need controls before we let the genie out of the genie's out of the bottle already. But, taking these controls off, you're giving the genie a shot of steroids here and jacking him up even more. The one thing that was disappointing to me was the scrapping of the government-backed digital ID efforts. This is likely going to stall enterprise identity verification and fraud reduction projects that are built on these mobile driver's licenses. I know they only rolled out to a handful of handful of states in the United States. Not New Jersey, where I'm at, unfortunately. So I don't get to enjoy that feature. So hopefully this is something that they'll pick back up and we can move forward with it, because I think the idea of carrying around documentation is rather passé at this point in time. So we'll see. The one concerning thing is this is I guess another indicator in the trend of walking back controls and defenses on cybersecurity at a time when we're getting hit the worst by nation state actors. Next up is an article that comes to us from The Record, from Russia with malware. In a cyber plot twist worthy of a spy thriller, a new hacker collective calling itself Lockbit 3.0, but likely unaffiliated with the original gang, has emerged to do what most ransomware groups avoid: target Russia. This new crew is using the Lockbit brand as a smokescreen and recently claimed to have attacked Russian state-owned companies, including the telecom giant, which I can't pronounce, that is Energos Byte Plus. We'll go with that. That sounds close. Their motives: allegedly retaliating for the war in Ukraine. Cybersecurity analysts remain skeptical of the group's identity, but agree the campaign breaks the long-standing taboo of Russian criminals steering clear of domestic targets in the mother country itself. And the interesting thing that we run into here is Russia has long been known as a shelter for cyber criminals, either cyber criminals that they sponsor or that they run themselves, or cyber criminals that simply attack their targets of opportunity that they want attacked that need a place to hide, and Russia seems to want to shelter them. With some cyber criminals, presumably in Russia itself, attacking the country, this may change that. You may see the Russian government crack down a little bit on this and actually start to become part of the solution and not part of the problem moving forward. There's also a copycat risk here, and the brand hijacking of Lockbit's a little strange. The attackers are posing as Lockbit, but all signs suggest they're not. But it raises concerns for enterprises that rely on threat actor attribution. If brand impersonation becomes common, incident response teams may need to reevaluate playbooks based on assumed group behavior. We have a tendency as human beings to put everything into categories and clusters, and it makes it easier for us to understand and deal with. And when you have someone come in who's pretending to be someone else, they get dropped into the bucket as that someone else. And there's a certain behavior, there's certain characteristics that are looked for from that group that now if someone who isn't really supposed to be in that group has been put in there, they could completely change some of the tactics that are used right now from a defensive standpoint. This also might suggest that the global threat modeling needs some recalibration. With Russian targets now seemingly fair game, the global cyber landscape becomes a little less predictable than what we're used to. I don't necessarily know if that's a bad thing, but I don't think it's a shift in the right direction for cybersecurity in general. But I think if the Russians start getting hit with cybersecurity attacks, they might start taking it a little bit more seriously and hopefully not incubating it within their borders. That's the biggest, I think, hope that we can take from all of this. Our next story comes to us from Cybersecurity News. More love notes from malware via Outlook. Microsoft is cracking down on risky email attachments by rolling out a new policy that blocks over 120 file types in Outlook on the web. This move, which brings the web-based version in line with Outlook's desktop application, aims to stop users from accidentally downloading or opening potentially malicious files like exe, JS, and VBS. Admins can override the defaults, but Microsoft strongly recommends against it unless absolutely necessary. How you determine that, I don't know. The change currently rolling out is part of Microsoft's ongoing effort to harden the email ecosystem against malware and phishing threats, which anytime I think of Microsoft and security, it kind of makes me chuckle, but we won't go there today. So what does this mean for commercial and enterprise entities? The one, I think, takeaway, the one big thing here is the aligning of security across platforms. You're going to get a consistency now with so many people moving to a web-based interface through Azure and Microsoft 365. Consistency across the board is important, not just, and Microsoft has done a very good job of making the look and feel of their web-enabled products very close to their desktop apps. But in this case here, this is a function that goes beyond the look and feel and what the users see. This goes into the fundamental realm of infrastructure and defense and protecting the user. So I think this is a good thing that they're aligning it across the boards. This may reduce the malware surface by blocking JS, JR, and reg files. By default, it will prevent a common path of ransomware or credential theft or system compromise. So any effort moving towards being more secure is good. Sure, you can debate that it's probably 4 or 5 years overdue. We should have been at this place quite some time ago. So I won't make that argument there. The one thing that did catch my attention about this was the explicit mention of liability of IT teams who do choose to override this. Microsoft is allowing the override via PowerShell, but it comes with a very strong warning where Microsoft does something that they don't normally do in these types of announcements, and they use specific legal phrasing when they brought up the possibility of liability. Now, I can only assume that that's because there was some incident in the past that was lodged against Microsoft where there was a question of liability for a similar security issue like this. So the fact that they are emphasizing that liability is shifting to the administrators and the IT staff, I think is an interesting side note to kind of point out. I'd be curious to see more about where that came from and what their actual intention is with that wording. We're going to take a quick break right now, but before we do, I want to take a minute to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Technology, or you can find audio and video versions of all the network's podcasts listed as Insights into Things, pretty much anywhere you get a podcast these days. Apple, Amazon, Buzzsprout, etc. I would also invite you to write in or call in and give us your feedback, give us your opinion. Tell us how you feel about our take on some of the news that we talk about here. You can email comments at insightsintothings.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail for us at 856-403-8788. Or you can get links to all that and more on our website at www.insightsintothings.com. We'll be right back.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. Next up is an article from Bleeping Computer. Microsoft rescues INET pub. In a classic case of, oops, don't delete that, Microsoft has issued a recovery script for restoring the critical INET pub folder after some admins mistakenly trashed it during server cleanup. The folder, used by Internet Information Services to host web content, is often misunderstood as junk if IIS isn't running, which makes perfect sense. Microsoft clarified that even when unused, the folder's absence can cause breakage in future Windows roles and features. The new script automates restoring the folder's default structure and permissions, saving IT teams from manually patching and a self-inflicted wound. Now they say self-inflicted, and I want to take a moment to take offense to that. There's a lot of tools out there that are used for automated system maintenance that are lifesavers for system admins and network admins. If you didn't have those and you had to do everything by hand, you wouldn't get anything done. And many of those tools, when they see that IIS service is not running, are smart enough to know that you don't need IIS. And you do now, and that's a problem. And you need it for something that you shouldn't need it for, and that's Windows updates. And Microsoft did a very poor job of announcing this. Well, they didn't announce it. People just started having problems. They did a poor job of addressing these issues. A PowerShell script to fix this, I think, is ridiculous. Because this doesn't just affect administrators and commercial and enterprise IT people. This potentially affects consumers as well. And you're going to hand the consumers a PowerShell script and expect them to know what to do with it. Clearly, Microsoft doesn't know their users that well. The biggest concern that I have here is in large organizations like where I'm at, the maintenance schedules, the maintenance activities have to be updated to take this into account. Microsoft didn't bother to notify anybody. They just put a change in. They assumed nobody was going to do anything about it, and they just let it fly. And then when people started deleting it and couldn't get Windows updates, they basically blamed it on the people for deleting a folder that they shouldn't need on their system in the first place. So this was a very sloppy mess that Microsoft created for really no good reason. And shame on Microsoft for their way of cleaning this up, because they didn't clean anything up. You still have a hot mess going on with this, and they gave you a sloppy patch for it. So I don't know if you can expect better than that from Microsoft these days, but I would expect better from that from any vendor, to be honest with you, when it's their core product like this. Next up is an article from 404 Media, the great Google phone book hack. In a shocking privacy slip, a security researcher discovered a method to uncover phone numbers tied to virtually any Google account, including Gmail and YouTube profiles. By exploiting Google's Find My Device system and leveraging how Google handles linked phone numbers, the researcher could reverse engineer the digits without needing prior access. The vulnerability, responsibly disclosed and now patched, could have allowed attackers to harvest personal phone data on a massive scale. Google acknowledged the issue, but did not reward the researcher through its bug bounty program, citing a policy technicality, which I think was kind of lame considering the potential impact of this attack. So, again, this is one of these situations where a third party has discovered this vulnerability. And it shows how identity-related metadata like phone numbers can be exposed without direct account access. And it's something where companies like Google and Meta and other big companies like that basically you're the profit center, you're the product that they harvest. They try to find every conceivable way of getting information out of you that they can sell without really taking into account the impact, the security impact that's going to have if that information gets out. And frankly, I don't think they care. They certainly don't care when the government and regulations don't force them to care. But I think it's also important to take a look at who you're giving your information to and why are you giving it to them. Because if it's to use a service that's free, you can rest assured that anything that you give them is going to be used, regardless of what obscure documentation they throw in your face to scroll through. This is the first instance where really Find My Device has become a vector, and it's become a tool that a lot of people have become quite dependent on. Google's device tracking tool was unintentionally weaponized here, proving that even good guy features can be flipped into privacy threats. It underscores the importance of threat modeling beyond the traditional attack surfaces. And I think that's probably the lesson learned here. Software developers are extremely creative people, and they can come up with the most ingenious ways to solve problems. One of the things that they, at least in my experience, I don't want to generalize too much here, but in my experience, the one thing that they're not very good at is thinking from a security posture from the start. So oftentimes there's this push, this rush to put features in and get them out the door, and people don't stop to think of the security implications and how this function or this tool or this ability to do something can be manipulated by a malicious actor. And unfortunately, the malicious actor, that's all they do all day long. So they tend to have a bigger advantage to that than we do. So unfortunately, the person who did get this did not get the bounty on here because they talked about it being, what was it? They said, even though Google has patched the flaw, incidents like this chip away at the trust enterprise customers and end users place in the platform's privacy protections, especially when Google accounts are so tightly bound to the personal identity. And they said that the Google refused to reward the discovery because of a technicality involved. This technicality involved a user enumeration vulnerability and not a full data breach. If you're going to stick to your guns on stuff like that, on a fine that was this big and this significant and potentially this damaging, you're really not doing your part to help the community, Google. You've got more money than God. Don't be so stingy with it when people come to you to fix things like this before someone malicious discovers it. Our last story today comes to us from the Register. Hikvision or Hacked Vision. More than 40,000 internet-connected surveillance cameras, many used in schools, hospitals, and businesses, were found to be accessible online with zero authentication. According to security researchers at Census, the mostly Hikvision branded devices expose live feeds, screenshots, and even geolocation data. The cameras were intended to be firewalls. The cameras were intended to be behind firewalls or VPNs, but poor network configurations left them wide open to the public internet. Hikvision, which has faced previous bans in the US and UK over national security concerns, hasn't publicly responded to this specific report yet. This is another situation in which misconfigured devices become a liability. The cameras weren't hacked necessarily. They were just left exposed by poor IT hygiene, default passwords, ports maps, firewalls not configured, VPNs not configured. It's a textbook example of default insecure IoT deployments. Hikvision has a significant reputation in the DoD space as being a Chinese-controlled country. And in fact, we had a project at my company not too long ago where we were looking at additional cameras, and the vendor had proposed Hikvision, and we did our due diligence and found that Hikvision was on the restricted access list for vendors because of the Chinese connection, and we weren't able to use them. So this has clearly been a problem moving forward here. But in this case here, you can't necessarily blame the products if they were used in the way that they were intended to be used behind firewalls and not open to the public, or even just having the passwords set correctly. You wouldn't have had these problems. It underscores the importance of implementing zero trust architecture, which we talked about previously, not just for software access, but for connected hardware. Publicly exposing security devices is the antithesis of that principle. We had an incident at one of my facilities just recently where we brought a vendor in to set us up with some new features for a conference room, and they needed to obviously be on our network space because it was all IP-based technology that they used. So the first thing we did was we gave them their own VLAN, and we segmented them off from the main network itself. And it's stuff like that you have to think of this stuff at the beginning, prior to implementation. You have to try to figure out where your security holes are going to be. You can't tack it on after the fact. You can't go out there and get all your bells and whistles and then try to secure it, because chances are you've already been exposed at that point. So hopefully this will get resolved fairly cleanly. Hikvision systems are generally pretty popular with consumers and commercial entities in the United States. So I think that was all we had for today. I did have my passcode deep dive that we're going to do. We're going to hold off on that. I wanted to go back and redo that and update some information in there. I wasn't really happy with that after I looked through it. So we should have that to you hopefully in the next couple of episodes. Before we do go, I did take the time to go through our social media and public presence sites to see who out there is joining us recently. On our WordPress site at www.insightsintothings.com, we had 3 new folks subscribe to us: Sandy Cowan 6, Harry Gilroy, and Tessa Milton 8393. Thank you so much for joining us on the website. And Twitch has kind of slowed down a little bit. We haven't been pushing as much of a presence on Twitch lately just because of scheduling issues. But we did have a few new follows. DQ123432, 163 Sash, and I'm going to spell this one because I can't pronounce it. YESITZ _DJ followed us this week on Twitch, and I want to thank you all for that. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of our viewers and listeners out there. Your feedback is always appreciated, and we'd love to know what else we can do to help serve the community out there. I do want to plug a couple of things before we go. First off, obviously, you can subscribe to the show. Video and audio versions of all of our shows can be found listed as Insights into Things. Just audio versions of this show can be found listed as Insights into Technology. And we're on Apple, Spotify, Google, and so forth. I would also recommend you reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Give us your take on things as we talk about them. Give us your opinion. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can call us, leave a voicemail at 856-403-8788. Again, that's 856-403-8788. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insights into things. If you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you do get a monthly Twitch Prime subscription for free. We'd appreciate it if you threw that our way. It helps keep the lights on around here. You can also find high-res versions of all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insights into things. Or you can find links to that and more on our main website at www.insightsintothings.com. That's it. Another one in the books.